What do a human man and an alien woman talk about when it's just them left at the end of the universe? The last sandwich in the known universe was peanut butter and pickles, and Ethan Clarke was furious about it. "You mean to tell me," he muttered, unwrapping the squashed, slightly irradiated package, "that humanity went through 7 interstellar wars, 8 space plagues, and 1 extremely awkward diplomatic scandal involving jellyfish diplomats, and this is what we leave behind?" No one responded, which was fair, since everyone else was dead. The food synthesizer sparked indignantly as if offended by his tone. He gave it a light kick, because that's what engineers do when they don't know how to fix something anymore. A low whine echoed through the hollow metallic corridors of the observation deck, the kind of sound that could have meant an imminent system failure, or just the sound of the fridge giving up on eternity. "Don't worry," Ethan said to the air, or maybe to the distant stars outside the dome. "I'll make do, just me, this monstrosity of a sandwich, and the slow death of everything. What a time to be alive." The ship, if it could still be called that, was orbiting the cold embers of a star once known as Perseus VII. It had been a vibrant thing once, throwing flares and tantrums like a toddler with laser cannons. Now it was a shrunken red marble, sullen and dim, like an old light bulb nobody had the heart to replace. Ethan leaned back in his chair, legs up on the console, biting into the sandwich with the grim determination of a man who had long since stopped caring about taste buds. The flavor hit his brain like a betrayal. He chewed, swallowed, contemplated his life choices. "I should have died with the rest of them," he mumbled. "At least I wouldn't have died tasting this." He tossed the rest of the sandwich toward the waste chute. It bounced off the rim, somersaulted midair, and landed neatly in his coffee mug. 3 points, he said dryly. Against whom, though? The station had been silent for months, years, decades. Time was hard to track when the clock started glitching and the universe itself was winding down. Light traveled more slowly now. Like it, too, had gotten tired of existing. The last known transmission had been a farewell from the Martian archive, delivered with all the gravitas of a weather forecast. Galactic collapse imminent. Recommend cozy blankets. Goodbye. Ethan hadn't responded. What was the point? Until yesterday. It came in as static first, then as a shimmer on the edge of his sensors. Then impossibly as a voice. "Hello? Is this thing still working?" The voice was musical and strange. Feminine, maybe. Filtered through 1,000 distortions like it had walked across time to find him. It was impossible. But then, so was surviving the universe's end on a station built from old mining parts and duct tape. "Ethan Clarke," he'd said, speaking for the first time in what felt like 1,000 eternities. "Maintenance technician, sandwich critic, part-time philosopher. Who the hell are you?" "I am Evelyn," came the reply, calm and unhurried, like she had nowhere better to be. "And I am the last of my kind, I think. Possibly, I might have overslept." That was how he met her. Now, 23 hours later, give or take some cosmic wobble, a tear in space opened outside the observation dome like a zipper being slowly pulled open by the fingers of a bored god. Ethan stood, cleaned his shirt with the dignity of a man who was about to meet the universe's last alien and didn't want sandwich stains as his legacy. He pressed his face to the glass and squinted. A shape emerged from the tear, floating, not in a spaceship, but as if carried by thought or whim. Humanoid. Definitely. Her form shimmered slightly, flickering at the edges, like reality couldn't decide whether it wanted to host her or not. Long ears swept back from her head like wind-carved crescent moons, and her eyes glowed a soft lavender, like dusk had been poured into her skull. She hovered a moment longer before the station's emergency dock hissed and unsealed with a theatrical sigh. Ethan was waiting with a cup of recycled coffee and his best attempt at charm. "Welcome to the last outpost of humanity," he said. "Population, me. And now, apparently, you." She stepped inside, barefoot, her skin catching the artificial light like water under starlight. "Is this your greeting ritual?" she asked, tilting her head. "To offer bean fluid and sarcasm?" "You got it," Ethan replied. "And if you're lucky, we can move on to bad puns and depressing poetry. I'm a full-service apocalypse buddy." She blinked, then smiled faintly. "I like you." "Well," he said, raising his cup, "you have low standards, and that's perfect. Have a seat. The furniture's terrible, but it doesn't bite." They sat. The quiet stretched, but it wasn't awkward. Not exactly. It was the kind of quiet you get when two people know there's literally no one else they'll ever talk to again. "So," Ethan said after a sip, "you're an alien. I'm a human. The universe is folding in on itself like a badly designed lawn chair. I guess the question is, what do we talk about?" She tapped her chin. "Do humans always talk so much when faced with oblivion?" "No," Ethan said. "Usually we panic, cry, or try to punch the nearest god. I'm just improvising." She nodded. "We have similar customs. My people once attempted to sue entropy for emotional damages." Ethan choked on his coffee. "Oh, stars, you're serious? Only on weekends." He laughed, genuine and surprised. It had been so long, he'd forgotten how it felt. She joined him, her voice like wind chimes hit by a solar flare. For a long while, they just talked. Not about survival, not about rebuilding or reversing the collapse. That would have been foolish. The universe was done negotiating. They talked about memories, regrets, things they wished they'd done before reality ran out of room. Ethan confessed he never learned to play the guitar. Evelyn said she once crashed a moon because she sneezed too hard during navigation training. They argued over whether cats were superior to dogs. Ethan, obviously yes, they're tiny space tyrants. Dogs are loyal. Cats would sell you to entropy for a shiny rock. When the lights dimmed and flickered, station failing again, they just sat in the fading glow, sharing stories as the edge of everything crept closer. It wasn't death they feared anymore. It was that they might have never met. "So let me get this straight," Ethan said, holding a crumbling data pad in one hand and a half-functional mug in the other. "Your people used emotion as a power source." Evelyn nodded, legs folded beneath her as she balanced on the edge of a broken console. "Yes, joy for propulsion, sorrow for shielding, embarrassment for stealth fields. That one was especially effective." "Because no one wants to look at something radiating secondhand shame?" "Exactly." Ethan tapped the mug twice and gave up when it buzzed angrily. The coffee was now lukewarm sludge, which he was starting to think might be an improvement. "And here I thought the peak of human energy innovation was yelling at appliances until they work." Evelyn cocked her head. "You don't store your feelings in reactors?" "We store them in playlists and poorly written poetry mostly." The lights overhead flickered. Not ominously, just lazily, like they were tired of pretending to be useful. Somewhere in the walls, something groaned. Ethan decided to ignore it. Either it was the gravity regulators or the ghost of someone who died near the janitor's closet. Either way, not his problem today. "I've been thinking," he said, hopping onto a nearby console with all the grace of a bored raccoon. "We should start a tradition." Evelyn raised a delicate eyebrow. "A tradition? There are two of us." "Exactly. That means no one can veto me." She gestured magnanimously. "Proceed, brave founder of Cosmic Customs." "Story exchanges," he declared. "Every night cycle, we tell one story each. Can be true, can be false, can be mildly illegal. Doesn't matter. Best one wins. No prizes, only bragging rights." Evelyn smiled. "Acceptable. But if I win 3 times in a row, I want to rename your coffee mug. I already named it Gerald. Then I shall call it Gerald the Inferior. Touche." That night, or what passed for night aboard a ship whose clocks had declared mutiny centuries ago, they sat by the cracked viewport. Outside, the remains of Perseus VII glowed faintly, the starlight stretched thin by gravitational exhaustion. Ethan had fashioned a makeshift campfire using a cluster of failed power cores and a flickering diagnostics panel. It hummed softly, pulsing with a faint, indecisive blue. "My turn," Evelyn said, stretching. "Once, I piloted a diplomatic vessel made of translucent thought steel into the mind of a sleeping gas giant." That sentence made my brain hiccup. Inside, I encountered dreams, entire civilizations existing only in vapor logic. One of them tried to recruit me into their tax system. Ethan snorted. "That's the most horrifying thing I've ever heard. I escaped by disguising myself as a metaphor." "Oh, come on, now you're just showing off." She bowed. "Your turn." He leaned back, squinting at the dying star. "Okay, once I went on a date with a girl from Europa. I thought it was going well until she told me her ex was technically still alive, just frozen beneath 6 meters of ice and quantum litigation. I spilled wine on my pants, panicked, and told her I was allergic to conversation." Evelyn blinked slowly. "You win. Gerald the Inferior says thank you." The next few cycles passed like that. Jokes, stories, and a growing sense of shared absurdity. Avalon taught Ethan to shape leftover quantum strings into simple constructs. He made a hat, which immediately collapsed into a black hole the size of a marble. They kept it in a jar and named it Barry. You cannot keep naming anomalies, Avalon warned. Tell that to Barry. She taught him her people's method of nonverbal communication, involving subtle energy pulses through fingertips. He tried it, accidentally shorted out the oxygen recycler for 4 hours. They spent that time playing charades using only facial expressions and very aggressive blinking. They explored the ship, or what was left of it. There was the greenhouse module, long dead but now repurposed into a zero-gravity trampoline zone. The hydroponics bay still contained one angry mushroom that had somehow achieved sentience and demanded diplomatic recognition. Ethan named it Greg. Your naming conventions are very human. They're very lonely. Avalon didn't argue. One cycle, she found a closet filled with ancient Earth items scavenged from past missions. They spent hours trying to understand a curling iron, a disco ball, and something labeled flavored yoga. Ethan put on a feather boa, Avalon tried on oversized sunglasses, and for 10 solid minutes, the universe didn't feel like it was ending. I think, Ethan said mid-conga line, this qualifies as culture. It is delightfully chaotic. That's us, the last two, delightfully chaotic and powered by regret and glitter. When the gravity failed mid-step and they both floated into the ceiling, Avalon declared herself victorious. The silence that followed was softer now. Not the oppressive silence of extinction, but the companionable kind, filled with half-finished sentences and the occasional curse as Ethan smacked his head against low-hanging panels. They spoke of regrets one cycle. Ethan admitted he'd once skipped a chance to travel with a girl who asked him to explore Saturn's rings with her. He'd said no, chose the job, the routine, never saw her again. Avalon said she had stayed behind when her people transcended their forms. She wasn't ready to be endless. She missed having fingers. They didn't comfort each other, just shared. That was enough. Later, he found her perched upside down in the remains of the communications room, legs floating above her, hair drifting like smoke. Do you ever wish we could rewind time? He asked. Only when I sneeze and accidentally erase molecules. Right? Normal stuff. I think the universe wanted this, she said. This? A barely functioning ship, 2 weirdos, and a sandwich named Gerald? She shrugged. Better than silence. Ethan smiled. The stars outside didn't blink anymore. They had grown still. Not dead. Just watching. As if waiting for the next story. Okay, first rule, Ethan said, clutching the makeshift fishing rod fashioned from old wiring, a magnet, and what was once probably a toothbrush. No using telepathy. That's cheating. Avalon floated beside him in zero gravity, expression as innocent as a rogue AI claiming it had only slightly deleted civilization. I would never, she said, in a tone that suggested she absolutely would. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Then how did you know I was thinking about grilled cheese? You're always thinking about grilled cheese. He conceded the point with a shrug and cast the line into the simulated ocean below them. The ocean was, technically, a storage bay filled with stabilized dark matter mist and shimmering light particles shaped via quantum string manipulation. It sparkled like a disco ball having an existential crisis. They called it Lake Not Really. I miss fish, Ethan muttered. Fish didn't make me question the fabric of reality every time I looked at them. Avalon tapped her wrist and summoned a projection. A vaguely fish-like creature appeared in shimmering light. It had 17 fins, a single giant eye, and appeared to be playing jazz. Do not, Ethan warned, ever show that to a marine biologist. I call it Jazzfin, Lord of Bubbles. I'm filing that under reasons I now fear water. The line jerked slightly, and Ethan shouted, I got something! Oh wait, nope, it's a wrench. You caught part of the ship? Don't knock it. Some people fish for sport. I fish for spare parts. He reeled it in triumphantly. The wrench glowed faintly and then began humming. Not ominously, more like it was trying to remember the tune to a song it heard once in 2147. That's not supposed to do that, is it? Ethan, you're literally holding a phase-shifted AI core adapter. It's probably sentient. Hello, he asked the wrench. It responded by lighting up in Morse code that translated roughly to rude. They named it Clarence and gave it a corner in the storage bay. It was now part of the crew. Later, they returned to the observation chamber, where Ethan had been conducting what he called important scientific experiments. which mostly involved sticking objects into the slowly expanding tear in spacetime near the docking bay and seeing what came back. A spoon had come back fused with a rubber duck. A sock had come back filled with what appeared to be ancient coupons for a gas station on Pluto. Avalon sighed. We are not poking the end of existence with kitchenware again. But science? No. Ethan sulked while holding a spatula like it was Excalibur. They sat in silence for a while. Then Avalon asked, Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed on Earth? Not really, Ethan said. I mean, Earth was already falling apart when I left. Between the sky taxes and the aggressive squirrels, it wasn't exactly paradise. Sky taxes? Don't ask. She leaned back, her long ears twitching slightly with amusement. I do wonder what I'd be like if I had gone with them. My people. Floating eternally in the void of enlightenment, surrounded by the echo of your ancestors? Worse. They sing opera. Ethan winced. Ah, eternal space opera, literal space opera. They tried to recruit me again once. Sent a vision through a particle storm, very dramatic, lots of glowing lights and feathers for some reason. Feathers? No one's ever explained that part. He handed her a marshmallow from a box labeled Emergency Happiness Units. Still glad you stayed? Still glad you exist, he blinked. She added, Otherwise I'd be very bored. He laughed, mostly at himself. Right? Can't have that. They took turns telling stories again. Ethan told one about the time he accidentally started a minor rebellion on a mining colony by misunderstanding a toast. Avalon recounted a duel she once fought using only metaphors and a spoon. Ethan asked if she missed her home planet. She said, It doesn't exist anymore. It folded into itself a few million cycles ago, tried to become a metaphor. For what? Unclear. Possibly regret. They passed time building a museum of oddities. A half-melted cereal box that looped the same jingle every 37 seconds, a chair that refused to let anyone sit on it unless they answered a riddle. The answer was always toaster. And a can of synthetic meat, labeled definitely not screaming inside. Avalon showed Ethan how to open old-time bubbles, fragments of space-time caught in stasis. They found one where a couple danced beneath a string of lights, endlessly looping. Ethan watched it for hours. You okay? She asked. Yeah, he said. Sometimes I forget people used to smile without irony. Irony is the armor of the lonely. He looked at her. Did you just quote something? My 7th grade teacher. She had 6 eyes and a lava tongue. Very wise. The next cycle, the station shook. Not violently. Just enough to remind them that even in the quiet, the universe was still crumbling. Bits of space outside the window had begun fracturing into geometric patterns, like the cosmos was pixelating before vanishing. Ethan stared. Well, that's new. Avalon nodded. Entropy's final phase. Reality gets artistic. It's like watching existence turn into modern art. A chunk of space shaped like a Mobius loop drifted past. Inside it, a copy of Gerald the Inferior floated serenely. Is that my mug? Avalon sipped her tea. Gerald has ascended. They sat on the floor, wrapped in emergency blankets and sarcasm. Ethan stared at the universe folding itself into increasingly weird dimensions. I was scared, he said. When the stars started going out, I thought it would be loud, explosions, screams, chaos. Instead, it's like everything's just tired. Avalon put a hand on his shoulder. Even stars burn out peacefully. You're not weak for resting too. He leaned into her touch. I don't want it to end. Then let's make it weird until the last frame. I thought we already were, she grinned. Then we're doing it right. They fell asleep beneath the hologram of Earth. Ethan had jury-rigged together. The continents were wrong. The clouds were upside down. The moon had a mustache. But it was home, at least for now. Ethan was halfway through explaining the complete and totally serious rules of Space Uno when the signal came through. No wild cards before turn 4, unless gravity reverses or someone mentions cheese. If that happens, the round resets, except for... Wait. He paused, the deck of glowing cards hovering midair between them. Are you getting that? Avalon blinked, her long ears twitching slightly. Yes. Is it? Definitely not local. They floated toward the main console, now fused with an old karaoke machine and a panel labeled Do Not Press This Button Unless Very Bored. The screen flickered, spasmed, then projected a fractal-shaped frequency pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat. A voice followed. Fractured, ancient, echoing across more dimensions than Ethan could count. Avalon, you are late. Ethan blinked. Okay, who invited the space grandparents? Evelyn didn't speak at first. Her gaze was fixed, unreadable. You were meant to ascend. The unraveling nears completion. Return or be forgotten. That's a bit dramatic, Ethan muttered. I recognize the signature. She said quietly, it's the consensus. My people. Or what's left of their awareness anyway. They've become something more than physical. Timeless. Boring. Did they always talk like omnipotent call center agents? They used to be fun. One of them once started a solar flare band. So they want you to ascend? Like into whatever glowing noodle dimension they're vibing in now? She nodded. They offer peace, clarity, no endings. Ethan scratched his head. Sounds suspiciously like a cult that floats. They mean well. They're guilt-tripping you from across the end of reality. Evelyn turned to face him. They're not wrong, Ethan. The structure of space is collapsing faster now. Soon, this station, this orbit, it won't be stable. Staying here, staying with you, might mean unraveling with it. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it, then opened it again like a Windows update stuck at 99%. I mean, he said finally, I get it, of course I get it. Go be timeless, ascend, glow or whatever. You don't need to. She raised a hand. No, we're not doing the noble sacrifice speech, but I practiced. Do you want to hear my decision? No, yes, maybe. She held up a finger. After one last game, he frowned. Uno? No. Questions. She pulled 2 chairs, levitating slightly in the flickering gravity field, into the center of the room. We each ask 5 questions, real ones, no sarcasm. That's unfair. Sarcasm is my primary language. They sat. The air buzzed softly, like the universe itself was eavesdropping. Evelyn began. What do you miss most? He didn't hesitate. Rain. The sound of it on windows, and mangoes. She smiled. Mangoes? I never got to finish my mango rating blog. I only got to mango 12. It was important work. Okay, your turn. He leaned back. Were you ever in love? A pause. Yes, once. He was a lightweaver who sculpted music into buildings. He left before the collapse. I didn't follow. Ethan gave a respectful nod. Hard to compete with musical architecture. Your second question, she said. Why did you really join the deep space mission? He hesitated. I said it was for adventure. Truth is, I didn't want to be on Earth when it ended. I didn't want to watch it fall apart. She softened. You weren't a coward. No, just early to the after party. My turn, he said. If you left now, what would you remember about me? She reached out, touched the side of his face. Your voice, the way you always filled silence with jokes, and that one time you challenged entropy to a dance-off. Technically, I won that. Entropy didn't show. She smirked. Third question. What's the thing you regret not saying? Ethan stared at her. It's what I'm trying to say now. Her eyes didn't move. He looked down. I think I started caring too late. I thought it wouldn't matter. End of the universe, you know? But now it matters. You matter. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Fourth question? Is it selfish if I don't want you to go? No, she said. It's the most human thing you've said. Her turn. What scares you most? Being forgotten, he whispered. Not dying, just no one remembering I was here, like I never mattered. She reached over, took his hand. You do, you always did. He looked up at her. Your last question. She leaned closer. If this is our last moment, how do you want to spend it? He considered, building the stupidest monument in galactic history. She blinked. Go on. We rigged the last functioning gravity drives and magnetic tethers. We shaped the collapsing light around us into a message, a beacon, something ridiculous. What kind of message? Something like, we were here. We laughed. We refused to die quietly. Evelyn stood. Let's do it. The rest of the cycle was a frenzy of cables, old components, questionable physics, and excessive glitter. They scavenged from every inch of the station, rerouting decaying energy from the cryocore, balancing it with the rhythmic pulses of the station's failing AI, and building a projector designed to carve language directly into the folding layers of space-time. They tested it by projecting a giant banana into the collapsing void. It worked beautifully. Ethan declared victory. If that's not immortality, I don't know what is. They stood on the observation deck as the stars twisted into spirals. The end was accelerating, a ripple of unbeing just beyond their orbit. Evelyn stared into it. They're calling again, she whispered. Go, Ethan said softly, if you want. But just know, I'm glad you were late. She turned to him. You should know something. I'm all ears. I was never going to leave. But the call, They've been calling for centuries. I stayed behind for a reason." He blinked. "What reason?" "To meet you." They stood in silence. Then, without another word, she activated the project. Across the edge of the universe, just before the last star winked out, a shimmering message unfurled in brilliant defiance. "We were here." We laughed. Ethan added a smaller line beneath it. "And our coffee was terrible." The universe, in its final moments, chuckled. Ethan woke up floating sideways. Not metaphorically. He was literally stuck at a 37-degree angle between the auxiliary power core and a crate labeled "Caution" contained sporks of unknown origin. His back hurt. His knee hurt. Even his dreams were sore. "Morning," Evelyn said from somewhere behind a rotating piece of wall. He squinted at the slowly reassembling ceiling. "Did gravity call in sick again?" "No, you rerouted it last night to make the O in the universal message pulse more dramatically." He groaned. "Worth it." It caused a time bubble in the shower. "Less worth it." She floated past him, hair drifting like she'd styled it with static and apathy. She held a tray. The tray held 2 mugs. One had a crack, the other had Gerald the Inferior written on it in suspiciously glittery ink. "Tea or tea?" she asked. "Surprise me." She handed him the Gerald mug. It smelled like fermented electricity. "Is this?" An attempt. He took a sip and tried not to scream. "You've weaponized flavor." "I call it quantum tang." The station groaned around them like an old man stretching before an apocalypse. Parts of the outer hull were gone now, not torn or broken, just gently erased by the encroaching collapse. Outside, space didn't sparkle anymore. It wobbled, like a memory trying to remember itself. "I checked the sensors," Evelyn said. "There's less than 0.01% of structured spacetime left. Reality is now officially mostly not." Ethan took another sip of horror. "Well, that explains the weather. I got hit by a hailstorm made of old math earlier." They drifted into the control room, which was more or less held together with magnetic tape and unearned optimism. The universal message still glowed faintly in the distance. "We were here. We laughed." Someone or something had added a thumbs-up emoji in interdimensional glyphs. "Was that you?" Ethan asked. "I thought it was you." They stared at the symbol. "Do you think," he started. "Someone saw it?" she finished. He nodded slowly. "That we weren't the absolute last? Could be a cosmic echo, could be a prank by entropy, could be Clarence." They turned toward the jar. The wrench inside flashed green. Ethan saluted. "Still the weirdest roommate I've ever had." Evelyn tapped a console and a hologram flickered to life. Earth, 1,000 versions of it stitched together from memories, dreams, and bits of inaccurate documentaries. "I thought we could spend our last cycles here," she said. "Build something. Make it feel like something mattered." He stared at the floating projections of trees, oceans, badly parked cars. "Like home?" "No," she said. "Better." They spent the next cycles crafting a living museum. They recreated ridiculous things. A noodle shop that only served invisible food. A library with sentient bookmarks that judged you silently. A theme park based on ancient Earth memes that made no sense but made them laugh anyway. He rebuilt a couch from insulation foam and memory metal. It adapted to mood. When sad, it played sitcom laugh tracks. When happy, it levitated. She grew a holographic garden that changed colors based on the temperature of nearby stars. They named the flowers after feelings no one had words for. They made a zoo with extinct creatures, all based on Ethan's vague descriptions and Evelyn's best guesses. The rhinoceros looked suspiciously like a toaster with legs. "Close enough," he said. "I'm adding wings." They argued over the ethics of simulated penguins and installed a planetary-sized disco ball above the garden. It sparkled like hope and mild headaches. Time passed. They stopped counting. At some point, the stars stopped dying because there were none left. At some point, the tear in space stopped growing because there was nothing else to take. At some point, they realized they weren't afraid anymore. One day, Ethan stood in the middle of their museum and looked around. "You know what I regret?" he asked. Evelyn appeared beside him, wearing a sweater made from string theory. "What?" "That I didn't learn earlier that existence doesn't need a point. It just needs people to share it with." She nodded. "You finally get it." He took a breath. "Do you?" She smiled. "I think I did all along. I just needed someone to prove me right." The light outside dimmed again, not in a sad way, more like a theater about to lower the curtain. The message still pulsed. The station still held. Then came the silence. The real kind. The one they'd expected long ago but no longer feared. Ethan sat beside Evelyn in their ridiculous Earth park, beneath a tree made of memory foam and digital fruit. "If this is it," he said, "I just want to say." She placed a hand on his. "I know." They closed their eyes. The last ripple of reality surged toward them and passed, and didn't end them. Instead, the silence blinked. Then a voice, low and amused and older than space, murmured, "Huh, not bad." And then light, not the old kind, a new kind. The rules had changed. Space breathed, time cracked a smile, and where two beings had waited for the end, something else began. Ethan opened one eye. Evelyn opened the other. "I thought we were done," he whispered. She tilted her head. "Maybe we weren't the finale." "Then what are we?" she grinned. "The punchline."